Alright, so last night I made a video, kind of an introduction for new reloaders, to basically showing you what you would need to consider to get started reloading, and recommending you buy some manuals in the time being while it's hard to get components and even dies and things like that. Even a lot of presses are sold out right now. I do a lot of bullet casting as well, and I'm going to show you here a little introduction to getting started with bullet casting, mainly just how to acquire lead. A lot of furnaces are sold out now for your casting. A lot of bullet molds for popular calibers. You'll find a lot of those sold out. So what you can do in the meantime during this panic buy and everything is try and acquire some lead if you think you'll ever be interested in bullet casting. Now what I've got here is wheel weights. This is one of your, well, I won't say more common sources that people use to get lead. It's what I started off with, but some states have banned it. I think California, you can't find a lead wheel weight anymore unless it's in maybe a museum. They've banned it, and other states have followed suit. I live in North Carolina, so they're still really common around here. I get about 65 to 75% of a 5-gallon bucket full of weights. They'll be lead. Now, you don't want any zinc at all to getting your lead. I've got some zinc here. These are steel weights, and over here is your lead, your clip-on and your stick-on. Zinc will it'll contaminate it. A little bit of zinc, probably even one weight's worth. It'll actually turn your pot into the consistency of oatmeal. You could probably make fishing weights with it, but you're not going to make bullets. It's just not going to fill out the mold. It's going to be real lumpy and just nasty stuff. The only way to get that out is you can flux it with sulfur, which is a real nasty process. So you don't really want to get into that. All right, we'll start off looking at some steel weights. Right away you'll see the FE on a lot of these. FE is steel or iron. Hard to see on some of these, but it's there. This is actually some kind of a rubbery composite material. I've just got it sitting with the steel because it goes in the scrap bucket with steel. That's useless. It's heavy, but it's rubbery. It's just some kind of mess. You're not going to be able to use it. But another thing you'll be able to do is use a pair of side cutters and a magnet while you're sorting your weights. If it's magnetic, other than the clip, you want to toss it. It's just no good. Like I say, you'll see the FE, and a lot of these. Well, let me turn one over here. A lot of these, if you see the clip is actually riveted on, then that's automatically steel. It won't be riveted on if it's anything else. But these, if you do mess up and get a couple of these in your melt, it's fine. They'll float to the top. I mean, the melting temperature for steel is way, way higher than lead. Lead's like 621 degrees. You'll find these plastic coated ones also. I've actually cut into one that's it's basically steel in there. It's useless. Zinc. This is what you do not want to get in your pot. This identified as the ZN. Visible on the majority of these. These are stick-ons. You can see that one good. This one, it's very, very faint in the top right corner. But you do not want zinc at all. Now, it'll actually melt. It's much lower than steel, but this melts around, I think it's around 700 degrees, so it's closer. And if you get it in your casting pot, or rather your, whatever you're using to melt your scrap down into ingots for your casting pot, I would recommend not putting dirty wheel weights in your actual casting pot. You'll end up stopping it up, and you'll need to flux to get the impurities out. Wheel weights are real nasty. They've got grease and everything else on them. But what you can do is sit there, use your magnet to help identify these if you're new. To help identify these, not all of them are marked ZN. You'll want to use a pair of side cutters. What you do with them is you just kind of get on the side of it or the corner. Let's see, I think I've got right there. You see how it cuts into it? It'll bite and gouge it really deep. That's lead. Zinc is a lot harder. You're not going to bite into that. That's hard. Some of these are coated, and you'll find some lead weights like this one is coated and looks just like that, but if you look at this one, I actually was able to cut the end of it off with very little effort. Lead's also heavier, but zinc is fairly heavy too, so just holding them, you may or may not be able to identify them. I can, because I've been doing it for a good while. But if you hit two of these together, it'll make more of a ringing sound, or tap it on concrete. Lead, it's more of a thud, so it's a dull sound. So you definitely want this out. You don't want zinc at all. Then we'll move over to your lead. Pretty much any weight, clip-on weight that says micro on it, I've never found one that wasn't lead. And you can also see, you'll have a lot of gouges and stuff. If you see a lot of gouges and dents in it, then it's most likely lead. It's just from, being thrown in the bucket and, just damage and dings from being mounted on a wheel, on a vehicle. But all these are lead. This is good usable. These steel clips, when you melt these, they'll just float to the top. You could skim them off. This is a harder lead. It's similar to, I think, Lyman number 2, which is a good alloy. It's a harder alloy. But these right here will make good bullets as is. I recommend when you sort your weights, you keep the clip-ons separate from your stick-ons. Stick-ons, especially these types here, these are almost pure lead. They're like 99, 98% pure lead. As opposed to these will have some antimony and maybe some tin content. These will make good muzzle loading bullets if you're into that. Shotgun slugs, anything that takes a good soft lead. But I don't do any of that. I do rifle and pistol. So you'll need to alloy these with something harder, like antimony or tin. I use side cutters to bite into these because they're not, it's not obvious that they're lead. They're dull, they're nasty and greasy. These are good and shiny. Now these up here are coated with similar same kind of stuff that you saw on one of the clip-ons in the zinc. These are extremely hard, but these are actually lead. They're made by a company I think called Plumco. You can see the little logo on there. When I first saw these, I thought they were zinc because they wasn't magnetic, but they were really hard. But I did some research, and these are actually hard lead. You could really just throw those in with your clip-ons, but I melt them with the soft stick-on weights anyway. But you can just get a good overview of what they look like. And these are nasty when you sort wheel weights. You get a bucket. Most of the tire shops I get mine from, they know I come and get them, so usually it's just weights in there, but you'll find a lot of valve stems. I found razor blades in there. Wads of tobacco where they've been chewing it. Some trash, gum wrappers, sucker sticks, things like that. So be careful when you're digging around in your bucket when you get them. A good going price for wheel weights, if you want to buy some, I wouldn't go over $25 for a 5-gallon bucket. And when I say 5-gallon bucket, I mean a full bucket, which is going to weigh 90 to 125 pounds for the tall ones. I wouldn't pay over $25 for it. It's just not worth it. You'll get, if it was 100% lead, it'd be different. But with the amount of steel and zinc in these buckets, it's not worth it. So I stepped out in my garage for a minute to show you, I consider a full bucket to be like this one. These are 5-gallon buckets. These are actually sorted clip-on weights. This is probably about 105, 110 pounds. That's all lead stick-ons. That's what's left of a bucket I have to finish sorting. This is my steel bucket. It's just got the scrap in it. And then zinc I actually do separately. Scrapyard to give you a little bit more for those. Now stepped up on the other side. You can see here I actually got this stuff from a scrapyard. It doesn't look like much at all, but there's actually 90 pounds of lead in there. That's all soft lead from a scrapyard. It's sheet. There's some cable sheathing in the bottom, some big ingots. Just soft lead. They call it clean lead in the scrapyard. You get it for about 80 cents a pound. And here's another source that I like to use. This is actually scrap, range scrap from the dirt berm at the range. I've got about 3 5-gallon buckets full of this, and these are probably about 125 to 135 pounds for a bucket full. But this will usually be between clip-on and stick-on. I usually alloy this just a little bit with some clip-on wheel weight scrap. And the jackets, they'll skim off. I'll do another video eventually showing the melting process outside. But that's my 3 main sources of lead. And the last thing you'll probably want to scrounge is this right here. Pewter. You find this stuff in thrift stores and whatever. You don't want to buy it at an antique shop because they're going to ask too much for it. But a thrift store, you'll find these things for, you know, $1 to $3 each. But pewter is very high in tin content, and you'll need a little tin to make your lead fill your bullets out to get good sharp bullets. Your driving bands, your bases, and you take this stuff and, you know, you'll take that glass out in that little ring. But well, it didn't focus very well, but I'll actually shoot a second part in a second showing the bottoms of these, or some of them anyway. You can see what you want to look for. It has to say pewter. It can't just look like it. It needs to say pewter, because you get some of the wrong stuff and it might have zinc in it, or some old pot metal. You know, you'll ruin your batch of lead if you're not careful. All right, I'll show you a little better here. See, English pewter, pewter. See, they need to say it. It's always going to be on the bottom, at least all the ones I've seen. Now you'll find a lot of your thrift stores are going to stick the price tag right on the pewter, so that's why most of them are peeled up a little bit. Or if I can get it off, I'll just re-stick it over to the side. Now you'll find things like candle holders. Don't get those. They feel like you're getting a lot of pewter, but they're weighted, and the bottom of it's just a gob with some waxy weighted base, so you're really only getting maybe a ½ ounce of pewter, and they want like $3 for it. So unless you can find a candle holder for like 50 cents or less, leave it sitting there. Somebody buy that and put it in their house. I usually won't pay more than $2, maybe $3 for something like this. Keeps costs down. But this is probably maybe 10% of what I've got. I got a lot of, usually this is recent stuff I brought in. Generally when I get it home, I'll smash it and put it in a 5-gallon bucket in the garage with all the lead and everything. And I'll cast this into its own separate ingots. All right, these are pewter ingots next to a 1-pound lead ingot. These I do usually 1 or 2 ounce. I use a small muffin pan and just spoon a little of it out in there. Because when you're doing your, I usually alloy my pewter in actually my casting pot. It's a bottom pour. So when I add some lead to it, I'll put in a few ounces of pewter, whatever I need to get sharp drive bands and everything on my bullets. Usually I'll keep about 10 to 15 pounds of these made at a time. So scrounge up some lead, some pewter, things like that, and I'll do another video shortly when it's not raining and stuff outside, and try to show you the melt process. And when I cast some more of these small pewter ingots, I'll do a small video on that as well. Alright, subscribe and stick around for more videos coming up.